It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is brought to you by Amori. How was your first Christmas without your mom? How was your wedding day without your dad? If you know the pain of losing someone you deeply loved, Amori is for you. Amori is a digital time capsule that helps you reflect on mortality, navigate emotions, and create heartfelt messages for your children, so you can feel prepared and let your presence be felt through life's many moments, even when you're no longer here. Let your words become a source of strength and comfort for those you leave behind. Tomorrow isn't promised, but your love can be. Download your mortality companion today at amori.life. That's AMORI.life, and use the code WhenWeDie50 for 50% off. Hey, and welcome back or welcome here if this is your first episode. It's been a crazy week getting this one together. I fell a little bit behind on edits and wasn't exactly sure which call I wanted to run. On top of that, it's been a short week for me since I'm headed to spend a few days with family, which by the time this airs, I'll just be getting back from. But I'm really excited about this one, and in the next couple of weeks, I'll hopefully start rolling out a video version of the podcast like I promised. In fact, that's part of the reason why I'm behind schedule. I'm trying to select calls before I started doing video, before I start bringing in the newer calls. It's a balancing act, but it's coming together. Just a few days ago, I recorded the first anonymous call with someone I know, and that will likely be the first episode you'll see and hear. So a lot of exciting things are happening, and I can't wait to keep watching this project evolve. Now for today's anonymous call. Some people believe in heaven, some in reincarnation. My guest today, she isn't sure she'll ever die at all. Maybe she's immortal, maybe someday she'll become a vampire, and as strange as that might sound, the way that she talks about it is actually pretty funny and surprisingly wise. From there, we talk about what it would mean to live forever, how she thinks about purgatory and heaven, and why every day feels like a slumber party. It's funny and offbeat, but also incredibly thoughtful. She shares what it means to walk people home, how she's embraced independence, and why focusing on the quality of life matters just as much as the quality of death. It's a strange conversation in only the best ways. I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Is there a preference on talking on speakerphone versus directly into the phone?
Directly into the phone will probably sound slightly better, but whatever feels more comfortable to you is kind of more important. So I think whatever you prefer. Sorry for not a committal answer.
Speaker, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Maybe just to start, you could briefly just kind of let me know why you're even interested in doing this call.
I'm interested, I think, because I've always been interested, but there's a couple of things going on. So my dad went into hospice care about a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's lasting way longer than we expected. So I think there's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, what is going on that's like keeping him like hanging on?
Yeah. And
it's also kind of made me wonder about death, but I also think with everything going on in the world and this sounds so doom and gloom, but seeing so much evil, I've started to wonder, is there a heaven or hell? But also something I've always felt, which probably sounds just completely silly, but I've always had this feeling that I was going to live forever.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't know if that's like a soul feeling where it's like a confirmation that when I die, my spirit will live on forever, or if that means I'm like a vampire that will be on earth forever. But ever since I was a little kid, I've always thought I would live forever, and I would say that too. I'm going to live forever, and
we are.
And so I've just kind of been exploring that a little bit more lately.
We are polar opposites because I feel like, and not necessarily that I felt like I was going to die at any moment, but like I've talked to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, when you're younger and you feel like you're going to live forever," and I was like, "No." I've always been worried. I've always been concerned. So I feel like I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. But yeah, that's
too funny.
Exciting. And I'm excited because I feel like with all of these, we kind of start in one place and it goes a million different directions. And I feel like this is going to go in a very interesting way. But before we get into all of that, maybe you can just give us a rough idea of where you're calling from and your favorite book and why.
I mean, I think this is vague enough. I'm in Philly, and I do name it as Philly because it's the best city on earth, and I think everybody should come here and check it out.
I've never been, so I'll have to come visit.
Please do. There's so much to see, and there's just so much personality. So definitely check it out.
Awesome.
And then as far as my favorite book, now I will tell you, I don't necessarily agree with this author's politics, but Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, I just found that the story is just so riveting, and it did cause me to ask myself a lot of questions about altruism and morals. And I don't know. I just think it's, like I said, just a really riveting story. I read it probably about once a year because it's just so incredible to me.
Oh, that's awesome. I have that on my list. I've been kind of going back and forth between, because it's Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, right? Are the two big ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think everything's been pointing me towards Fountainhead. So I'll take your recommendation as maybe confirmation that I should read it.
If you do, make sure you don't have anything else to do in your personal life, because you will want to sit and just read the book nonstop.
I love that, because I don't ever want anything to do in my personal life. I just want to read all the time. So maybe that moved it even more to the top of the list now.
See, I'm saying all the right things.
Yeah, you are. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm excited. I have a list going of all the anonymous recommendations for the book, so I'm excited to add that to that. I'm excited to chat with you. And so now that we have all that out of the way, maybe we can just kind of dive into, what do you think happens when we die?
I don't think that it just ends. And I know a lot of people feel that way. So I do think our spirits might float around in the earth a little bit, or around the earth. But I think that there is a purgatory.
Okay.
I am Catholic, but I would say I've not been to church in years. But so they do, teach about purgatory. But I think there's something very powerful about that, because I think a lot of people, and I'm not trying to be preachy.
No.
I promise. I don't even know if I believe in God or not. But
no. This is your time to share. So you're not going to sound preachy. That's what this project's all about, is just hearing what people believe. And everybody has their own beliefs. And so I want to hear what you think, and without necessarily, and I think that's also the anonymity part, right? Is without a filter to some extent. If you start rambling off racial slurs and stuff like that. But by and large, I feel like I'd want you to feel comfortable and not feel like you have to. Okay. So yeah,
Sounds
sorry
great.
to cut you off, but yes, anyway.
Oh, no, I'm glad you did. But yeah, I do believe in purgatory. I think that a lot of people have this concept that you die and either go to heaven or hell. And that is just this automatic thing. And that just doesn't make sense to me. And I think it doesn't make sense to, the Catholic Church. That happens because you live on this earth as an imperfect person. We have jealousy. We have people that we might hate or dislike. And we have our different habits and addictions. So we're imperfect. And the idea of going to heaven is that you're going to this this Shangri-La, and that you're going to this purest form of spirit. And so if people didn't go through this kind of purgatory, kind of this cleansing of the spirit, then how would heaven be any different from the earth? And that seems perfectly logical to me. However, I do think it's kind of funny that on earth we have all these, in every single society, there's something governing us. I think it's funny that our concept of heaven, we still have somebody that's governing over us.
Totally.
You still have a boss.
It's familiarity to some extent, right?
Exactly. It's we have to be able to fashion this idea of order in our minds to be able to even digest the idea of heaven. But I do believe in a heaven. I do believe in a hell. But I do believe that anybody, even the worst people on this planet, can go to heaven, but the amount of time that they have to spend in purgatory would be different. And I think that's the whole concept of forgiveness and being able to go to heaven. But I do think it's interesting. I ask people if they believe in ghosts, and there are so many people that are no, that's not possible. And I don't know. I think there are just too many coincidences and odd things that happen for us not to have this idea of ghosts or spirits kind of wandering the earth after we pass.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like that whole like idea of like heaven and needing to be governed, and the idea of God and the idea of things happening on earth that we can't really explain, I'm kind of at a crossroads.
I have so many questions in my head, and I'm trying to figure out which one's the best one to kind of introduce here. You mentioned that you have this feeling that you're going to live forever. And I don't necessarily, I assume it was a joke about being a vampire, but maybe it's not. But does that...
I mean, I'm not going to lie. The idea of being like a sexy vampire would be so awesome, because you never see like just an okay vampire. They're all sexy. So
that's true.
That is very appealing.
That is so true. So with that idea of you living forever, or this feeling, does that play into this idea of heaven and hell, or does that feel like it's something different?
So I think it doesn't necessarily affect like the idea of heaven and hell, but it does make me a lot less afraid of dying, because it makes me think that it's just never going to happen. And I don't know why this is what makes me think about it, but I read an article, and it was kind of in the aftermath of all these like dystopian end of the world movies and shows that came out. And people have the tendency to say, well, if I were in that situation, just kill me. And the truth of the matter is that people have been in dystopian situations, like when Hiroshima dropped, or the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And that's a 100% dystopian situation. But people weren't offing themselves left and right. The human spirit kind of compels us to try to survive the best we can.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot more strength in the spirit than we give credit for. I think sometimes we kind of think of the spirit in platitudes, and always kind of like, I don't know, just kind of thinking that it's just this random little nice to have hallmark thing. And I actually think that there is real energy in our spirit and real strength in it. And so I think there's part of that makes me think I will live forever. But I've also just had this gut feeling. So I guess it just makes me less afraid of that happening. But I also think I watched this one comedian. He was, I want to say like Sweden, where they have just a very different form of humor.
Yeah, totally. Very dry.
Drier, right? Yeah. And in his comedy, he said something like, well, why would you be afraid of death? And the punchline is like, wouldn't it be just like what you were before you were born? Like you're just a nothing. See, very dry. And I did kind of think he might be onto something. Like, what would I know? If there is no spirit and it just dies, what would I know if I were dead? So there is that part of me that's like, it all could very much disappear. Yeah. And even though like initially that seems kind of scary, I think that's more of a scary thing for the living, not for the dead, because it's
totally.
You're thinking, well, am I going to get to say goodbye to everybody? Well, I've gotten to do all the things. But if the spirit just goes black when we die, then it's like, what would it matter? So I think there's some kind of comfort in that. But yeah, I think if I have this feeling that I'm never going to die forever, like ever, then it's like heaven and hell are just kind of it's a thing for other people.
That does, because that was
something that I probably won't face.
Because I was going to say I think that's a little bit of kind of where I was getting at the question. I think you answered it, or you answered the question. I didn't ask it very effectively, but it was, essentially like this idea of living forever to some extent could be, well, yeah, I die and then I go to heaven and continue to live forever. Mm-hmm. But you are very much saying that you have this just kind of innate feeling that you're different, and that that's an experience for other people to have.
And I do want to say, though, that doesn't, I'm not a narcissist. I'm sure that's written on the cocktail napkin of the narcissist club,
Totally.
I don't think I'm particularly special. But yeah, I don't know. Ever since I was a little kid, it just seemed like something that was for other people. Mm. For all I know, that could be a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
As a very, form of extreme fear of death. But I don't think it is, because my idea of heaven, like I said, is, this place where our soul has been cleansed and we're surrounded by beautiful people, and beautiful in spirit, not necessarily in form. But yeah, so heaven has never been scary for me. And I've always thought, if you want to go to heaven, you can. You just need to go through that purgatory process. So it's like hell's not even a concept for me.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I just watched a movie recently called, I think it's called The Man from Earth.
Oh, yes.
And essentially
It's like you can only watch it on like YouTube or something.
I don't even know where I watched it. But, you know, he essentially, I can't remember exactly the specific time period, but it's like 10,000 years before like the Common Era. That was like when he was born. And then he like lives essentially forever. So there's an interesting question in that though, too, because when I interviewed my dad, it was there was kind of two questions he came up with. And one of them to this point is, if you could live forever, would you want to? And so if you have this innate feeling that you're going to live forever, is there any fear in that you are going to live forever? And what that means about loved ones and all that stuff who aren't going to live forever?
Right. I'd say yes. So about a year ago, I actually got very much into nutrition and personal training. If there's this concept that I'm going to be around forever, then it's like, well, I better start getting my body in order and ready to live forever. So I think there is kind of that physical sort of fear. But I would also say there is a little bit of a fear of being alone forever.
Yeah.
Because I think there was this movie called like Age of Adelaide or something, and in her youth experienced like a car accident and it made her live forever. And she could never really like have a full-time love because either somebody would figure it out, but she was living forever, or, you know, they wouldn't like age at the same time. So it's like something would always kind of be off.
Yeah.
So that does make me kind of fearful that I would never find my person. And honestly, at this point, I'm 46 and I don't have that person. So I'm like, maybe like I'm not meant to have a person. But I also think, yeah, it does make me fearful about like the people that will die before me. But it's like, I don't have any children.
Yeah.
And even though, you know, I mentioned my father going into hospice, like I'm not necessarily particularly close with him or my mother. And so it's one of those things where I kind of feel like a loner and kind of detached from that feeling. I mean, I have friends and stuff, but I'll always make friends.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about
There's
that.
always more friends to be made.
Exactly. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I think that there can be some heartbreak in the idea of living forever, but that's part of the human condition anyways. And it's like, if you're not going to be heartbroken over this one particular thing, you're always going to be experiencing heartbreak over something else.
Yeah, totally.
Like, okay, if it's just missing people or being sad to say goodbye, then that's fine. Someone recently shared with me that there's a concept by Ram Dass about death, and he is one of these people who also thinks that you don't really ever die, that the spirit keeps living. But something he had said is that, you know, the friends and family that we make, they are just people that are walking us home.
Mm.
And
I haven't heard that one. I like that.
It's actually really sweet. But I'm like, I've never really had that person in my life that I would consider walking me home. And I kind of have a feeling that I will probably always be like that. And it kind of confirms like the idea of living forever, like that I'm kind of like this outsider that's just meant to not be walked home. Mm. But I also think maybe that also means that I'm meant to walk a lot of people home, and that maybe that's my duty on this earth, is to meet a lot of people and walk them through life.
And that's a heavy, I don't want to say burden, but that's a heavy weight to carry, I guess, is maybe a way of saying that.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, I flip-flop because, you know, again, I'm like, if the spirit gets to keep living and possibly can go on to this field that's wonderful, then maybe that's just another reason not to fear death. And maybe I'm just walking people into something that's even better. But then it's also kind of like, then that reality does hit of the being a loner and not getting to be at the end with all my friends.
Totally.
Not getting to party with my friends in heaven. So I don't know. I guess it does go both ways, but I think I tend to lean more towards the positive side of it, in that like I will get to have the most fun on earth. Because even though like we are all like having our own issues to deal with and things that break our hearts, I'm having the time of my life. Like, even if I'm just sitting in my living room with my cats, like, I'm having the best time ever. So,
Reading Fountainhead.
Exactly. I actually, the other night, like, as I was going to bed, I was like, every day is like the best slumber party ever, because I get into my, my jammy jams and I listen to music and I read poetry, and it's just like the most relaxing, fun time ever. And I've got my cats that like come and snuggle with me. And I mean, every moment of my life is just, it may not be the happiest, but it's like, I'm so happy to be here. It's a blast. So I think there's also that upside to the idea of never dying.
There is beauty in independence and like being able to do whatever you want to do to some extent. I mean, not everything, but like, hey, I'm going to go to bed now and it's 7:00. And the next night I'm going to go to bed now and it's 1 a.m. There is beauty in that for sure. And it's a balancing act, right? You hold both those things where it's like, this could be a heavy burden to hold, but then it's also, there's beauty in it too. That's something I'm learning more and more about. And I think that's, Ram Dass and Buddhism, and not just that Buddhists and Buddhism have a strong hold on balance or whatever, but I think they talk about it quite a bit amongst other people and religions. And
do Buddhists, do they believe in an afterlife? Do you know?
Buddhists, I'm definitely learning more about Buddhism. I don't necessarily know if this is true because I mean, just like Christianity, there's a lot of different factions, if that's the right word to use. I know some Buddhists believes in reincarnation. And I know there's some ideas around that we've chosen this life and the people around us to learn lessons. And I think in some forms of Buddhism, there is a hell. And again, I'm getting in the weeds a little bit of like, I'm stretching my knowledge. So I'm sure if I'm getting something wrong or whatever, but I have heard that there is a hell, but it's not necessarily a forever thing, that you're kind of always moving through these different phases and wheels and whatnot. And that reincarnation is a big part of it. But that is my limited understanding, because I have not, surprisingly, like with my interest in Buddhism, I haven't really touched much on the death side of things, and that's something I definitely need to do and want to do. But I do know reincarnation. That was a long way of saying reincarnation is one of the things that I know they believe.
You know what, though? I do think that with religion, it's almost every religion, they believe in some form of your spirit going on.
Totally.
And I can't help but wonder, is it because we truly believe in death, or of the spirit? Because obviously bodies do die, but if that's like a coping mechanism that we've all kind of agreed to accept because it's too scary to think that like it just all goes black when we're done.
Totally. And I know this is not the only reason for religion, but I think a lot of religion is about what happens after we die. Right. And it's a really hard religion to sell, to say, okay, come join our church or our, I don't know all the names of all the things.
I've never thought of that before.
But it's really hard to sell, hey, come join our church. When you die, nothing's going to happen. It's like, that's a really hard pill for people to swallow. There's a lot of other things that come along with church. I definitely didn't grow up religious, but it's how to live your life. But to some extent, those things of how do you live your life are playing a part in your death and what happens after you die. I guess maybe the Church of Nihilism or something like that is kind of what we're proposing here. And I think that's hard for the majority of people to like wrap their heads around. Right. I don't know, because people already don't really want to be reminded that they're going to die.
Right.
Let alone say, hey, this church that you and I just invented. And I'm sure, there probably is a church like this that already exists, because this is planet Earth and there's so many people and there's so many ideas that this probably already does exist. But in this church that you and I just developed, that's a hard pill to swallow. And that's a hard congregation to get to show up, I think.
To buy into.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm a Mexican woman, and we have the whole Day of the Dead. And I think like that's affected me as well, because we very much feel like there is an active spirit that still is like pretty much part of our daily lives.
Yeah.
And even though we have the 3 days of celebration, there's still this spirit that, they're the marigolds, so that they can like find that's meant to be the path to find us. And we set out the food and even sometimes like pillows and stuff, because we do very much believe that there's a spirit that comes back to us and is going to be like tired and hungry when they get to us.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do think that the spirit very much is active, even if it's from a dead person, that the spirit is still very much a part of our lives.
Yeah.
So I know, like, I had this cat and he got very old, and for a couple of years, I'd like struggled with his death. I had him put to sleep, but I think, and this is probably something a lot of pet owners feel, but wondering if they put the animal down too quickly or not.
Yeah.
And I think I'd kind of avoided that question for a while. And then one night I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take his ashes. Like I'd had the box of ashes like put aside, and I hadn't really touched it since he had passed. And one night I brought the box out and I laid it on my bed when I went to bed, and I decided to have popcorn and champagne, and all my other cats actually got onto the bed, and I was just like, you know what, Ben? That's the name of the cat. And I was just like, we're gonna sit with this, and we're gonna be comfortable with this. And I don't know, like I felt like he was very much there. And after that moment, I did feel like there was a peace that came over me, and I feel like there may have even been like a peace that came over his spirit, because now like I know that he's not in my dreams anymore. And which is, I mean, I know like a lot of people, they think that's probably a good thing, but for me it was just making me like sad.
Yeah, totally.
I think that the dead person's spirit can still be very much actively in our lives, and maybe like what Ben and I needed was to be able to congregate in my bed with popcorn and champagne. So,
that's what I would want.
Say though, regarding, right? But I do want to say though, some people like when they, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but some people wonder why like animals can't live as long. And I can't help but wonder if like our death, it could potentially be linked to how much love we're giving to others. And almost every pet owner out there, they will say something like they give us so much more than...
You're going to make me cry.
I know. But I do think like it's so sad, but it's like maybe that's like why some like little children die, which seems so unfair, but it's like maybe they filled the world with so much love that it was time to come home again.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that about our pets and animals, is that they all just give us so much more that it's just they expend it all quicker than we do.
Yeah. Gosh, I love my animals.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
But you know what? I don't know if you have any cats, but supposedly the diet for cats is so much better now that they're saying more cats are living to 20 and beyond. So if you have cats, it's good news.
I have dogs, and I have an almost 18-year-old dog. So
what? That never happens.
Yeah. So, and I mean, he's very lethargic and sleeps most of the day, but when it's dinner time, he is pumped. He's jumping around. He's running. It's not super fast, but it's that's an interesting, I like that idea about the love. I mean, I think that's something that comes up a lot. I can't remember where I heard this from, but it's like on the other side, ego is gone. And I can't remember where I heard that, but it's just like, that makes sense with our pets too, of whether you did or didn't have to like, and I can't remember, I had a pet death doula on the show, and she said she had a different phrase than putting your pets down. She didn't like that phrase, and I can't remember what it was.
Probably similar to the walking our friends home.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
And so, maybe I'll use that phrase instead. So when you're making the decision to walk your cat home and weren't sure if it was too soon or too late, and I don't even know if you said that specifically about yourself. I think you maybe more generalized it. But on the other side, there is no ego from those pets, right? That it's, hey, you just love me and I love you back, and and that's enough.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. We don't need more reasons to beat ourselves up and to feel guilty about things, like especially stuff like that where it's like, this is an impossible decision. There is no, if we look at this chart, this is the exact right time to do it. Like that doesn't exist. If it did, then I think we'd probably also be looking, I would hope we'd be looking at that in humans more, right? Like, because there's a lot of people that suffer, going through surgeries and stuff and treatments that quote unquote prolong life. I heard it another way where it prolongs death. It prolongs the suffering. And so, yeah, it's impossible to know the quote unquote right time. And so, yeah, we do the best that we can.
Well, in that respect to the whole like prolonging life and death, I think it's also, though, good to kind of keep in context that like suffering is subjective. I mean, there are plenty of people that are alive, but there are plenty of people that are alive and suffering, not even physically, but emotionally.
Totally.
Or there are people that are alive that are surviving, but they're not really living.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who every day their idea of living is going home and watching The Simpsons, which is awesome. But I mean, there might be a lot more to, a better life. So I don't know. I think it's subjective.
Yeah. With life, it always is, right? There's a lot of nuance. And I think that's also really hard because with nuance, it gets back to, when you make the decision, to walk your pet home, there's nuance there. And that's hard to deal with. And so we don't like that. We like concrete. We like, this is exactly how it is, but that is just not how life works.
Can I ask you why or where did your fear of death come from? Or like why you have an anxiety over it?
Oh, I mean, that's something that I'm still kind of trying to figure out to some extent. But I think I just remember always kind of having this general fear of it. Being little and not saying that this is the reason for it, but I grew up in suburbia. And I mean, the news is so much worse now with just, fear and all this stuff. But I mean, I remember it's like, oh yeah, this person got killed in a shooting and then this happened and this happened and this happened. And I just remember some of that as a kid and hearing that stressed me out. I think I've also been very self-aware for a long time. And so I think I just kind of had this realization of me as a human or an identity or whatever and existing in this world. And I just think I had this innate sense of knowing that it was going to end at some point. But there's not like, because I've had a friend who's like, oh, there's something that you're just blocking out. And I'm like, I really, really don't think there's something that happened.
Sometimes there's not. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it literally is just, how I grew up. But that's the best explanation that I can come up with.
Your big question. It's just your big question. And who knows, like maybe by doing this, it will bring, more comfort or maybe give other people the ability to think about death differently even.
I think it's already done both those things, which is great. I mean, I still have that anxiety, but it's definitely less. And I definitely know that, I hear from people who are just like, oh yeah, I have this anxiety, and just hearing different people's ideas and thoughts helps me. So I know I'm on the right track. I don't know where this is going to head. Like when I started this, I didn't even plan on doing anonymous calls, and now I'm only doing anonymous calls. And so I love being able to do this and love being able to have these conversations. And I'm glad that you applied and that we were able to have this conversation. I had so much fun talking to you.
Can I just say one thing really quick? I know we're probably running out of time.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, if you're thinking about, the concept of death, it's also important to think about like the concept of life and how you're living your life.
Totally.
Something that I told somebody the other day, I do not get embarrassed. About 20 years ago, I just decided I was done with embarrassment. And so when people say like things are cringe and awkward, I don't buy into it. And it's because I think that a lot of people, life is just so chaotic for each of us that we tend to just pay attention to our own selves.
Yeah.
And even if like your embarrassment goes viral, it's like people still have this very short attention span for other people's lives. But also I think being imperfect it's the human condition. So it's like we've all had broccoli stuck in our teeth. We've all walked out of the bathroom with toilet paper on our shoe. Like
totally.
We've all went around with like the wrong buttons buttoned. And it's just like we're all dorks. Like even the coolest people, even like Matthew McConaughey is a huge dork in the scheme of things.
Totally.
And if we looked at the Earth from space with a telescope, I think we'd see a bunch of people that look like Bambi, just learning how to walk. And even the coolest, smartest person is still a Bambi. So I think whether I live or die, I think that has been a big factor in my quality of life and being able to have fun. It's allowed me to have way more conversations and talk to a lot of people that I probably wouldn't have before. I mean, it's allowed me to have life experiences, travel, tour with bands, or I've lived in different countries, and I've done a lot of really cool things in my life. And I think part of it is because I've just rejected this idea of like being held back by like my ego or, the fear of embarrassment or making the wrong decision. So I think focusing on the quality of life versus, I guess, the quality of death is just as important.
Totally. And I've said this on here before, but it's like the biggest shift in my life thinking about death is how I live now. Being less afraid to take risks. The one thing that came up that popped in my head and it's stuck in my head is it's impossible to make a right or wrong decision because for it to be right or wrong, there actually has to be like another scenario. You'd have to actually do it twice to know, oh yeah, this was the right, and probably a bunch of times I get and other people get stuck in, I don't know what to do because I don't want to make a bad decision. I don't want to make a wrong decision. Is it a right decision to move to another state or is it a wrong decision? Should I switch my job? Is that a good or a bad decision? Like there's no good or bad in those things. You just make a decision and you live with that. If you don't take the job and you stay where you are and you hate it and it's like, maybe I made the wrong decision and if you took that job, then that company folds and you don't have a job for 6 months or something, whatever it is, like it's impossible to know. And so, I think you're totally right
absolutely.
I think that's part of this, right? Is thinking about death, but more importantly, it comes back to the quality of our lives and how we're living and realizing that, it's finite. Maybe not for you, but it's finite.
I'm telling you, if I am infinite, I really do need to get my head around the whole skincare situation.
Even for you immortals, it's impossible to exist. There's always something we got to do, right?
There's always something.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for doing this call. I'm glad that you applied. I had a great time talking with you, and thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you.
Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. What I loved about this conversation is the way that it swings between quirky and profound. One moment we're talking about sexy vampires, and the next we're digging into purgatory, loneliness, and what it means to live fully. It's a good reminder that conversations about death don't always have to be heavy. Sometimes they can make you laugh, even as they make you think. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space. Space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. If a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Call 971-328-0864 and share what you believe happens when we die. And if you want to support the podcast, you can join on Patreon or just like, share, and follow. Anything helps. Until next time, have a good life.
Hi. I've been watching your videos and these videos of you sharing the voicemails that people leave you, and it's heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. And I'm not sure that I know what happens when you die. I just recently lost 3 people that were very close to me and very dear to me. My mother-in-law, my own mother, and then my father-in-law. And everything I thought I knew it just changed, I know what I hope happens when we die. I hope that we start again. I have these dreams that, whatever it is, reincarnation, whatever you want to call it, I just hope that they're living life again, whether it be through another human body or through a tree or through a butterfly or a bird, somewhere where they can see the wonder of the world. So I guess that's my answer for now. Maybe I'll call back. But thank you for doing this project and for sharing all of this. And I think it's okay that your answer changes and that your beliefs change. But yeah, all right. Thank you.